if you're going into some kind of art form, especially something this difficult, you have to be literally obsessed with it, right? You have to be like passionate, obsessed. You have to just, because there's going to be, it's going to be difficult.
Welcome to the Spanish Guitar Mastermind, where we take a look at the journey of accomplished Spanish guitarists so that we can all learn from their daily habits, from their mindset and their strategies, so that we can all reach our fullest potential as Spanish guitarists. Today, I'm excited to bring onto the show one of my favorite flamenco guitarists that is right here in the United States. His name is Don Soledad. He's an accomplished recording artist and touring artist as well. Has some amazing originals as well that we're going to break into and talk about. So let's welcome to the show, Don Soledad.
Hey, how you doing, David? David, man, thank you for inviting me, man. Appreciate it. Great to be here. Great to be here. Yeah, just a heads up about my name. People always trip out like Don and then Soledad. But Don is actually a nickname of mine. I'm actually Wilfredo. I'm a junior for my dad. So people ask like, man, what's with Don Soledad? It's like it's like the dawn of solitude.
I've known you now for like a couple of years, and I never knew if your first name was Donald, and you were just going with the Don Soledad. I meant to ask you that, so that's a good.
Definitely not Donald.
Most people just go by Don as your nickname.
Yeah, because my mom gave me that nickname when I was a kid. So it's kind of like I'm Filipino, and we have the Spanish ancestry, and you get a lot of like the nicknames kind of things, similar to like a lot of this the Latinos and stuff. So she gave me that, and it kind of just stuck, and I never used Wilfredo again. It's just everybody calls me Don. So it looks kind of interesting when you look at it as like an artistic name, but it works.
So, let's start off right from the beginning. How did you discover Spanish guitar? What drew you to it? What drew you specifically to flamenco and that aspect of the Spanish guitar?
Yeah, so for me, I grew up in California. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I was always into music. Me and my brother played, like in bands and stuff. He was the guitarist actually, and I was the drummer. I was the drummer back then. This was junior high to high school, and I was into heavy metal like most people, rock and all that. And we jammed, and I played with different bands and did some like gigs with like all sorts of different styles. And in my early 20s, I heard Papi de Lucia perform at the University of Berkeley, California, at their hall there, and that's the first time I saw him, and I was just blown away. Growing up in a musical family, I've always had an instrument, either the drums or guitar. A guitar was always on the couch somewhere, in the household. So we had a Spanish classical guitar, and I remember, like a steel string or something. But I kind of gravitated more to the Spanish guitar because I just liked the sound better, and it just felt better playing it. So that's what kind of got me started in the guitar itself in a musical standpoint. And then eventually, after I saw Papi de Lucia, his two shows in Berkeley, I was blown away, and I was like, man, I need to learn this. It's something that I wanted to do because it felt like it was kind of it was close to me.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the right thing to kind of how to explain it, but the nylon string guitar and the Spanish guitar was close to me, and it was very personal, kind of like playing it, for me, like that, just the feeling of playing a nylon string guitar. So that's kind of like how it started. And eventually, I started taking lessons in my early 20s, 22, 23 years old, with the maestros that I found in the San Francisco Bay Area. Starting off with Mariano de Cordova. He was already in his 80s, I think late 70s, probably late 70s when I met him. So he was my very first maestro in California, Northern California. And then I was able to take lessons as well with Diego del Gastor's nephew, Agustin Rios. He was living in Oakland, California, so I got to start taking some stuff with him. And also, the younger generation at the time, Jason McGuire, I took lessons with him as well, just for a little bit. And from there, I went to Spain, and I studied in Spain for a little bit as well, and just took whatever I can get there, and bring it back home. Studied in Jerez de la Frontera, in Sevilla.
I didn't realize your journey kind of started off like mine, which I think should be encouraging for a lot of people that think that starting later in life it makes it impossible or more difficult that you started in your early 20s. I also started in my early 20s getting into Spanish guitar. I had a little bit of some experience with other styles and stuff, like a little rock and a little dabbling around, but it wasn't until my early 20s as well that I also, just like you saw Paco, I saw a show in Madrid, and that same thing. I said I got to go back home and do it. I mean, you were lucky enough to have some nice maestros in your area, so that was a huge benefit and help to have some great mentors around.
Definitely. I think I was kind of like lucky growing up at that time, you know, in the 90s, like late 90s, with the flamenco scene. I think it was still very big, you know, at least in San Francisco before everything else started happening. Yeah, there's a lot of other musicians kind of like the same age as me growing up in flamenco that were kind of coming up, you know, and learning and getting, you know, their knowledge from
Yeah,
these same people that I spoke about. One of them is the late Ben Woods. You know, we started off kind of the same time. He moved from Seattle to San
yeah.
Francisco, and you know, we lived right next to each other. We used to jam all the time, and
Looking back to that time of your life or that phase of learning and immersing yourself into the style, what would you say is the main thing that helped you break that beginner's barrier and continue to dive into flamenco and get encouraged and inspired and go down this path? Because a lot of people break like after a few months or after a year, because flamenco, it's a tough road, especially being a foreigner to Spanish culture and growing up here in the States.
I think it's important to say that if you're going into some kind of art form, especially something this difficult, you know, you have to be literally obsessed with it, right? You have to be like passionate, obsessed. You have to just, you know, because there's going to be, you know, it's going to be difficult. I think for me, when I first started, I never really looked at it as like I need to be at a certain point, you know, at a certain time. You know, I just kind of learned it slowly, getting the techniques down, and just really, you know, pushing myself as much as I could personally, right? Because I think a lot of people that go into this art form that want to learn flamenco guitar, they think, you know, like any kind of guitar style, right? They're going to learn it right away, you know, and they get frustrated, which we all do. You know, we all get frustrated in the beginning, but I think that self drive, self motivation is what's going to get you to kind of like really seriously learn these things. And like I said, you know, obsession, being passionate, you know, about the art form and just kind of keeping it that narrow kind of view, you know, and just going and doing as much as you can, you know. I never really went to school for guitar playing or theory or anything. I learned like a flamenco, you know. So face to face learning. I knew how to read a little bit because I took music lessons when I was a kid in junior high because I played the drums and stuff. But that's not really considered as like, you know, similar to like learning the music of guitar. That was my background, and but yeah, just to answer your question, I think the important thing as a beginner is for me, I would encourage learning techniques first. You know, the right hand techniques, because if you're coming from a different background with a pick, it's a total, you know, total different world, right? So for me, it's learning the technique first, understanding the technique, and then the compás. Those two things, because the left hand is going to be there a little bit easier, I think. Just my opinion, but the right hand is the what gets you, you know, the difficult thing.
Yeah, I mean, just to circle back to what you just said at the beginning too, is I think the one word that is very important is that word obsession. Some people view it like a bad thing, and but honestly, that's like the one common word I hear with everybody who succeeds in something. It's like you have to be obsessed with it. You have to love it so much that you're obsessed with it, that that's what you want to do, like every
For
extra
sure.
second you have. And that's how I felt about the guitar. That's what helped me break beginner's barrier at the beginning, was that I was really obsessed with flamenco, and I was spending as much time as I can, and things change with time.
Right.
We go through phases, and but that's what initially helps us all, I think, break into a new genre, or
Exactly.
whether it be flamenco or something else. And then what you said, just working with technique, I
Right. Right.
definitely
For
agree
sure.
with that. A lot of people like to just want to jump straight into the into the styles, the songs, and they want to neglect the technique. I see that a lot with a lot of beginner students, a lot of students that I've
Yeah.
had, and I try to tell them the nice way and try to mix in some of the fun stuff with the technique, but some of them just want to
For
jump
sure.
straight over to the pieces and they're like, no, I want to play this, but you can't. It's going to nip you later on if you try to just go for the good stuff without the technique.
Exactly, exactly. I think one thing I found out also was just when you start learning other people's other maestros falsetas, right? Phrasing is so important in flamenco, right? Like when you're phrasing it according to that player's phrasing, right? Because everybody has their own voice in flamenco. Vicente Amigo, Paco, all those guys. So when you're learning their falsetas, apart from learning it note per note, learning the actual phrasing, their phrasing, right? Their style of playing is another thing. Sometimes you're successful, sometimes you're
Right.
not, and those times when you're not successful, you kind of make it your own. You know, you learn these pieces and you kind of make it your own, and you might be able to use it for some kind of composition for yourself. So that's kind of like my experience. Maybe some people have the same thing, but that's like where I'm coming or where I'm what I've experienced in learning flamenco.
Yeah, I think learning from starting off with the covers, working on the falsetas is that's how you get your foundation. I definitely agree.
For sure.
And what I love
Yeah,
about flamenco is that you take these traditional falsetas and then everybody puts their spin on it, and then you get to that's one of the ways that flamenco just evolves. Everyone puts their spin on traditional riffs and makes it their own.
that's
And
it.
and and
Yeah,
and you hear people's personalities coming out through these falsetas that have been played 1,000 times, but somebody might put a little bit of a different spin or a little different taste into it. So
and that's what flamenco's about, I think.
you write a lot of your own music as well, and you delved into writing for a lot of the flamenco palos, the traditional palos, but writing your own compositions. Do you think that came from studying a lot of the traditional stuff first and playing a lot of other maestros' music first that led you kind of to open up your mind and say, all right, I kind of see the patterns now, and now I got some of my own ideas?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, as you go along and learn falsetas and how things work in flamenco, depending on the palo or like I said earlier, the phrasing. I think that was a big thing for me to kind of like flip around or
Yeah.
whatever, however you want to say it, and kind of tweak it a little bit and make it your own. That's definitely a bigger, probably one of the biggest things that I was able to adapt, in my own playing and my own compositions, from my first album, my second album. Yeah, learning other people's stuff like Vicente Amigo. I'm such a big Vicente Amigo fan. I kind of started because of him. After I heard him play, because I would listen to Paco and I'd be like, man, that's like over my head. All this stuff that he's doing, right? And then Vicente kind of made it more like doable. If that's the thing to kind of like his style of playing was more how would you say like more understanding as far as like the musical knowledge, right? The way he would play a rumba would be like A, like that kind of like jazz kind of like arrangement. So you're kind of like pop even pop, right? So he kind of started that movement, I think, in the early '90s, and so people was attracted, attracted to that kind of that style of composing. They get it, like the whole that whole thing. So they 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 gravitated towards like it's like a bossa nova piece, like I've heard that before. The whole chord progression. Yeah, I think it's just very important for beginner guitarists to learn it the right way. Learn it, play it slowly. Everything, play every faceta slow, and that's one of the things that I had to deal with because I think I was sort of a fast learner in some of in a way, and then that's what kind of bit me at the end. And it was like learning so fast and then not really getting everything precisely in compass and everything. And but studying with different maestros helping with that because every time that you do lesson with them, they're like play it slow, have a either a metronome or for me, I think it's a compass track. Play a slow, against a compass track and getting that really perfect, or as perfect as you can.
You mentioned obviously Paco was your first introduction into flamenco, and then Vicente came along, and you became a big Vicente fan. Were the traditional flamenco maestros your main portal into flamenco, or was it? Were there any of the pop Spanish guitar artists that also kind of attracted you, like per se, like the Gypsy Kings or Jesse Cook? rap more, or for you was it the
Yeah,
opposite? Because most of us actually, it's a little bit of the opposite. Like we hear some of the more pop stuff that is a little more accessible at first
yeah,
for
yeah,
us, and then we go into the
for
hardcore
sure.
stuff. But it sounds like you did the opposite route.
You know, I knew the difference pretty early on because like listening to Paco, like when I first saw him in Berkeley, I mean I saw him play at UC Berkeley, I was like, man, that's like really complicated stuff. I couldn't really grasp the ideas, right? And then listening to his CDs and albums, and I was like, man, this is like just way over my head. Harmony and all the different things he was doing. So I did, listen
Yeah,
to like Jesse Cook, Otmar Liebert, all those things. It's like the gateway, right, to like all this flamenco stuff, and I appreciated both sides. I think the melody, like Armic, like Armic, and oh my gosh, I got Struz and Farah, Lara and Reyes, Sergio Lara is actually a good friend of mine, that kind of did that rumba flamenco with the very nice melodies and remakes of like classic songs, right? I think it kind of helped me determine like what can be
yeah,
done in flamenco composition wise, and what direction I wanted to go to. You know what I mean? Like what direction do I want to go and compose, and like for my first album or whatever. Yeah, I would say, like, to answer your question, I think both kind of affected me at the same time. Like I knew what this was and I knew what that was, and I kind of like put it together, and I'm in this
uh,
balancing act. In
middle
the
ground.
middle, you're like in this middle ground. You're like going left and right, and you're like, okay, people might like this, and flamenco guitars might like this. Well, I think what's important in composition is it's your composition. So I think ultimately what's important is you being happy, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day. So when you record that thing, you're like, I mean, you're not going to be totally happy. You never, I think, no one's ever fully happy with everything with like recording, but um, you at least kind of like can say that at the end of the day it's yours, you know,
Hmm.
and you did your best at that time when you recorded it. So
Right.
I think there's something to say about that.
When you're writing your own music, flamenco is very delicate to a lot of people, or true flamencos, Spaniards, the gypsies, they take it very close to their heart, and it's part of them, their way of life. It's not just a musical genre like some people that don't play flamenco think.
Yeah,
So, do you ever
purists.
still feel, or did you feel at the beginning when you started writing the music and performing as a foreigner to this
Yeah.
culture, just like myself, were you apprehensive to release some of this music, like worried about like what are the flamencos going to think I'm trying to write in their in their style, not just the pop stuff, but you're going for actual palos like the bulerías, writing in alegría, and or did you just say, screw it, this is my voice, this
Yeah.
is what I'm putting out?
Pretty much the latter, man. The latter, what you just said. I think since I knew the difference in the beginning. For me when I first started in going to Spain helped me a lot. Like listening and seeing people like this is their life. Like the Gitanos, even the Payos, in Jerez de la Frontera, just seeing these kids play, and you're like, holy crap, you know what I mean? I'll never get to that level, even at this age, because they just live the life. They live flamenco, right? So I think for me, I was able to just do my own thing and be happy with it. And I never really looked at like, you know, people saying, okay, that's not really flamenco, which some people probably did, probably do. And it is what it is, right? But they say the same thing about Paco. They say the same thing about Vicente, about maybe not Tomatito so much, but it is what it is. You make your own thing, and I think for me, I always come back to that saying. First off, I'm a musician. The second, I'm a guitarist, and third, hey, if I can call myself a flamenco guitarist, that's awesome. So that's like the row for me.
I think that's how I feel
Yeah,
myself as well. And we've talked about this before, but I think that's one of the things that I appreciated from Ben Woods is that he was definitely very vocal about playing his music and his style, and he was very vocal about saying, "Hey, I didn't grow up in Spain. I
yeah,
wasn't I wasn't
totally,
surrounded by Spaniards, so
totally.
I'm just gonna play this flamenco music with my influences, with my metal influences, with my all the influences I grew up with, and
Yeah,
how it's coming out with." And he definitely had a voice, like with his guitar. You could tell it's him playing, and whether you liked it or you didn't like it, it was, at least he had a voice he had a signature sound. So
That's it.
that's definitely something to be respected. I
Yeah, for
mean,
sure,
like
for sure.
sometimes you may like something or you may not, but it's something to be respected when somebody has their own voice, I think.
Yeah, for
So
sure. I think just to get back to Ben, I remember him just starting off that I don't know he did this thing the flamenco thing,
yeah,
right?
that's
Is
how
that
I
how you
discovered
discovered
him.
him? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember going to gosh, Ben's friends would probably know this if they're watching this. He started off in this little warehouse in Oakland, really beat up warehouse, man. And he would have his metal guitarist there, drummer, and they'll have rehearsals at this little warehouse. And I was able to go, and he invited me one time, and he had a flamenco dancers, and man, I mean, just he's a visionary. He was a visionary, Ben. And so it's like you see this going on in front of you, and you're this 22-year-old, 23-year-old kid that's kind of like, holy crap, like what is this? Like you see flamenco, the elements of flamenco, and he can play because he played the palos. He understood. He played for dancers and stuff like that. But at the same time, he wanted to have a voice, right? And a voice of like, hey, I'm not like you said, I'm not from Spain. I'm from the U.S. I'm not tricking anybody. You know, this is who I am, and this is music at the end of the day, man. So it's something to like really um, appreciate.
Yeah, his influence made it all the way to Spain. One time I was sharing a hotel with one of my favorite flamenco
Mm.
fusion slash rock bands called El Bicho. I
Oh
was staying
wow,
at the
yeah.
same hotel as them when I went to see them. And when I went down for breakfast, I was like hanging out with a couple of the guys, and they're like, "Hey, so you're from the States?" They're like, "Have you heard of flamenco?" Flamenco,
Oh
and
yeah.
I'm like, "Oh yeah, for sure." I mean, I've seen him. He's like, "Yeah, I catch some of their videos on YouTube
That's so
and
cool.
really dig that sound." So yeah, it's cool when you have your own when you have your own signature sound. It's not to be underestimated. People will be listening. So
Yeah, 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 definitely. And on top of that, man, Ben was an incredible, cool guy, man. So he got
yeah.
along with everybody, and at the time when I knew him, we were both leaving. He was leaving for LA, and I was leaving for Florida. And we kind of moved the same time, around the same time. And he had people in the Bay Area that didn't like what he was doing, already on top of it, and he knew that. We talked about that. I remember getting tacos with him at a Roach Coach taqueria, and talking about that. But yeah, I was just bringing back memories of like the talks we had. But he already, and he was just, I'm going that way, you know. This is what I'm doing, and this is what I'm gonna hold on to and make a name for myself. It was great, man. It's awesome.
So just kind of fast forwarding to your current phase right now in your journey, what are some of your daily habits that you abide by now? Do you have a routine? Do you have non-negotiable practice routine, or are you kind of a little bit more laid back? What's it look like nowadays?
Yeah, I'm doing more concerts like shows now here in Orlando and Central Florida, South Florida. Um, I'm doing more like festivals and kind of focusing more on developing this kind of show with my band, with my group, my flamenco group, which is the Don Soledad group. So working with some new dancers from Venezuela, I'm just blessed to have here. For some reason, a lot of the Venezuelans came to Orlando, Florida
Hmm.
area. So I think being a guitarist here in Orlando is it's a blessing to have these passionate Venezolanas, dancers that because it was big in Venezuela. Anyway,
For those who don't know, there's a huge flamenco following and community in Venezuela, so there's a lot going on down there.
yeah, it's really deep in the culture. For some reason, I don't know. I think what it was in the '60s. They had flamenco, a lot of flamenco there from Spain. But just getting back on topic, now what I do now is I concentrate more on the shows. And as far as preparation, what I would do is I would go through a set list. I don't know how it's for other people, but for me as a guitarist or as a creative person, I think deadlines help with this stuff. Having the deadline, having the rehearsals with the dancers and the other bandmates. So now I concentrate more on the repertoire for the concerts and just going to each one. And as far as practicing them, I would like I would go do each piece and go slow, you know, and then work out the difficult sections of the piece. And there's no shortcuts, unfortunately. And what I also would like to add to that is, as far as a beginner guitarist or flamenco guitarist, or however, whatever you're doing in the arts, is envisioning yourself on stage. That really helps me, and kind of going through these pieces in your head and just kind of envisioning what you're going to be doing, because I think that preparation, that mental preparation, helps with going on stage. Because a lot of flamenco concerts usually start doing a solo, right? A solo piece, and that's nerve wracking, man. I mean, the first few years of me doing that, regardless of how big the concert is, it's nerve wracking because you're walking in with a guitar, sitting down, tuning, and then going through the piece. So everything is amplified, right? Everybody's looking at you, microphone. You're under a microscope. I call the microphone a microscope. You're on it, man. So a lot of that kind of really, you get better as you do more, like kind of with experience, like most things. But
How bad was your performance anxiety about that? Was it just pretty average, or did you feel like it would overtake you sometimes?
the biggest thing for me, I think, was playing a piece and then focusing too much, instead of just playing, muscle memory and just feeling. If you start thinking about playing the piece with emotion and how it's supposed to be played and how you recorded it or how you practice it, then you don't look too much at what you're doing on your left hand or whatever, right? I tend to close my eyes when I play. People say like, "Why are you closing your eyes?" Like I'm not trying to like show off or whatever. It's because I feel like I can concentrate more when I'm playing. With my eyes closed, and it's different for everybody. Sometimes when I start looking at the left hand, I mean, I start messing up, man. Serious, because you're looking at you're not really feeling it anymore, right? So for me, that's one of the things. But being nervous, it's always going to be there, I think, which is a double-edged sword, right? It keeps you on your toes, but you get better at it. I think you kind of I've seen Tomatito do that, right, live, and I've seen some pretty
Mhm.
terrible like performances by these maestros, right? So what they do is they start over, right? They start the phrase over, or they just wait for the compás to go full round. They come back. Fixing it is the way to save it, right? Fixing that mess up. And you just kind
Well,
of learn.
because the main thing I think in general is not to get into your head and to
Yeah.
not to start thinking about technique and fingerings. Once you start
Oh man,
trying to,
it's
at least
over.
for myself, once you start overthinking fingerings and saying, was this in the fifth position?
Ah,
Was this note?
dude,
Was this which finger? Then that's where it's like it could be game over because
game over.
you're leaving the music and you're going into the logistics of it. And if you don't have you should already have the logistics down. So yeah, if you didn't practice
Right,
enough or anything, then
right,
that's a whole nother story. But if you did all the prep possible, there's no reason to overthink it anymore because
for
then
sure.
it's just time to go with the music.
Oh man, yeah,
Um,
yeah, for sure, man.
One tip that I'll add that helped me over time, like you said, you like to close your eyes and immerse yourself. For me now, I like to like just literally like sing the song in my head, like kind
Oh,
of
that's great.
hear the melody and like
That's
just go
great.
with it and just so that my mind is just thinking the music is going through my head and through my fingers and
Yeah, that's a great way to do it.
so
Actually, Ben and I had a conversation about that one time on the phone. We talked about like because we were talking about compositions and how do you compose your own piece. He asked me and I asked him, and for him he said, I mean, this is probably a well-known kind of thing, but he would just play the progression and then make the ideas with his mouth, like singing through it.
Mhm.
Because he can
Yeah.
do it, he can play the chord and play the melody. So he would do that and record himself, and because you have so much, you're limited, right? With a guitar, you're limited with ideas because you're trying to like look at it and what you're doing and the movements and everything, and the ideas on the guitar is a little bit you're stuck, no, well, not stuck, but limited. But with your mouth or your voice, boundless, man. Like ideas, So like you said, man, that's awesome. That's a great way to definitely think about practicing, right, and getting ready for performance.
Awesome. I don't want to hold you up too much and take up too much of your time. Is where can people look you up online? Could they find your music on Spotify? and some other platforms as well. And where can they look up your dates and all that?
Yeah, definitely. If you're in Florida, I mean, definitely check us out. I'm here in Orlando, Central Florida area, but you can check me out on donsoledad.com, and you can check out my music on Spotify and all that good stuff from there. More of the older stuff, that I made. Currently working on some new stuff, but you know how that goes.
Yeah, I know how it goes. We one project at a time.
Yeah,
So
that's it, man. That's it. But but I think this is great, man. I love this what you started, and looking forward to seeing more artists on here, especially like with how you're doing things. Having musicians and people that started from the U.S. or North America, and sharing their ideas and thoughts and things that can help, the beginner guitarist or whoever that needs, inspiration.
yeah, no, I'm really loving this. I love hearing people's backstories and the whole journey, and how some I find some similarities, like I just found between us, and
Hmm.
then also just some of the differences that got us to where we're at. So, I mean, I do it for my selfish reasons, so I could also hear these stories, but also loving that some aspiring guitarists or just fans of your music can hear a little bit about what got you where you got.
For sure, man.
But yeah, thanks again. And make sure to look up Don Soledad online. And we will see you on the next episode.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
David.